Good evening. Welcome to the 5-8, where we discuss each of the week's 5 most fucked up topics for 8 minutes each. So, 5 topics, 8 minutes, 2 hosts, a guest, little singing, a lot of curse words, and as many cocktails as we deem necessary. LB, how are you?
I'm well. I'm joining you in your Manhattan tonight.
All right, it's a double Manhattan
It's a
evening. I
double
love it.
Manhattan evening.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. I didn't get to have a Manhattan last week because there was chaos here, and
Yeah.
I'm glad to be able to have one this week. Be back
Yeah.
on the Manhattan schedule.
Yeah. And I didn't want anything because I was handling the chaos in the absence of you.
Yep.
But I didn't sleep at all last night. I got 2 hours of sleep because the coyotes have come from Los Angeles to New York. They have followed me here and kept me up all night long. So we got a coyote problem. I don't know. Anyway, so
stay away from the coyotes.
It might make me a little loopy. I have some water as well because I want to be sharp for our guest, and I want to get to our guest.
Because he's staying up late.
He's in a bad time zone. He's in a bad time zone.
Staying up late. We're grateful to him for staying up late.
Yeah.
I have a little thing I got to get off my chest. I'm a little irritated about something.
I'm sorry.
No, it was something that happened over the weekend. I mean, I went to the theater, and with this new girl that I'm dating. And, she looked pretty good.
Yeah.
And, they dim the lights and everybody's looking at the theater. And I'm like, hey, I'm not really interested in that. This is a good time for me to get to second base. And then, we're kind of going out and then they throw us out of the theater. Can you believe that?
I mean,
I know it's terrible, right? I mean, she was also vaping and yelling at people and saying, do you know who I am? And all this.
Did she pull the "Do you know who I am" card?
She did.
I missed that part. You were splashed all over the place.
It was a really great dress, though.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I was a little tipsy, but
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Anyway, I am of course joking. This is what really happened to Lauren Boebert over the weekend, who went to go see Beetlejuice the musical with some guy, and got thrown out. And the reporting was it was because she was vaping and because she was belligerent. And now, right before we're going on the air here, it appears that there's video of him basically, fondling her. And
it's a full on.
And her practicing stick shift there in the old theater. So it's not a great look, but look, I know things are bad for Boebert right now, but the good news is, the good news is not to worry because Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis wrote a letter saying that she's actually a good person. So nothing to worry about, Lauren Boebert. It's all good.
Nothing to worry about. Good. Yeah. And Drew Barrymore came on later and cried about how she just had to hire her. She just had to vote for her. She had no choice but to vote for Boebert. No, we're kidding with all that too, but we'll get to these people a little bit later on. And get to stop joking about it, but actually tell you guys what's been going on out there, which I'm sure our audience is well informed of.
So, okay. So last week, I was only here for a short period of time. And since that time, I went on the Tony Michaels podcast and on my own podcast. And I've talked a lot about this whole Kevin McCarthy impeachment business.
Setting the timer.
Set the timer. It's just, it's obviously a crock of shit, but I am very curious to hear your thoughts on this subject. So, what do you think about this, LB?
This is where I get frustrated, and it's not the frustration I used to have. It's not the outrage that I used to have, which is just went nowhere and no one was listening and it didn't matter. And the coverage was always so horrible. And I just feel like there's a sort of collective incentive to drive Americans off this cliff. And from the journalism about these criminals, not the Bidens, but the Trumps that we had before, and then and all the people around them, and then into this always the false equivalency, just the never-ending false equivalency, and then at the far end of that, the Democrat leadership always coming back with, well, we can't really go after them in the way that you guys all want us to, because if we do that to them, then they're gonna, when they get power, they're gonna do it to us. It's like, They don't even have the power and they're doing it to you. They do it to you no matter what. They're never going to not do it to you. So how about, since you have a little power that we work so hard to give you, you do something about this. Now, I realize that McCarthy's got the majority in the House. And so we're stuck with this with the House. We're just stuck with this ridiculousness. In terms of the underlying facts and what's been presented so far in this case, this inquiry that they want to go into for the impeachment, which appears to be, although I think the Afghanistan withdrawal is going to get thrown in there, it appears to be very heavily focused on Hunter Biden in Burisma in China and whether or not Joe Biden personally profited when he was not in office, maybe when he was in VP 2 administrations ago, off of Hunter's using his daddy's name to get ahead, using his dad's name, right? And maybe being on the phone call, even though the other people on the phone call said, yeah, Joe didn't do anything on the phone call. He just was like, hello, his son is, his son has addiction issues and his son is out there hustling and his son is using his dad's name. I remember Fergie doing this. Remember we had Fergie in the United Kingdom where she was caught, trading on Andrew's name with some very unscrupulous characters. So, and that this is happening while we all know that Jared Kushner walked out of that, his job, he was working for the administration. It wasn't just a son or son-in-law. He was working. He was the guy doing everything. Remember, he had every single win he took credit for during the Trump administration, or what they perceived to be wins. Jared took credit for all of it and then some. And Donald never had a cross thought about him or a cross tweet. He just was afraid of him. He was afraid of Jared. And we don't know why still, definitively. We can only speculate. But so I normally would have been, if I was 4 years ago, I would be outraged about all this. And now I'm just like, okay. So that's what I think about Kevin McCarthy. I think he's spineless. I think he's what he is. I think he's in there to do this. And I don't think he's run. I think there was a whole article, I don't even remember who said it, was saying, well, it's really Matt Gaetz is the speaker. And it's not Kevin McCarthy. He's not, no one cares about him or is listening to him. He's there. He was put in there. He had to make all these concessions and deals. And he's like Bo Barrett's date. If we can't stick shift you in the direction that we want, we're kicking you out of the theater. This is what's happening to him. So I don't know. I do want to remind everybody, though, of some of the stuff with Jared, and then go to the more appropriate
analog,
which are Donald Trump's actual sons. So Jared, he got his $2 billion exit parachute from the Saudis for delivering Jamal Khashoggi. Apparently, we don't know, or the Mideast peace. This is what it was. It was just Jared, cashing in on all the business deals that all these people were always in with each other anyway. We've got his rampant corruption around COVID. We still don't have any answers to that. We know that the PPP money was going to his friends. We know that he had his shadow COVID, whatever, coming up with ways to kill as many Americans as he could in blue states, thinking that would keep them in power. We've got Ivanka and her hundreds of millions in cash out. And don't forget, Greg Olear, don't forget that in the transition of the Trump administration from Obama to Trump, in that transition era, that Jared Kushner had Kislyak in a meeting with Mike Flynn, I think was also there, and was looking for a back channels directly to Putin. And who else was there? Was Sergei Gorkov, the head of the VEB Bank. We don't know why, but the banker was there. The banker was there because someone was cashing in.
Yeah.
Someone was cashing in.
I believe that after that meeting, Gorkov flew directly to Moscow to report to Putin, by the way.
I think he did.
Yeah, pretty sure.
He did. All right. But the more appropriate analogy are the sons, right? Because they didn't work in the administration. Hunter didn't work in the administration. We didn't elect Hunter, and Hunter's not in there doing anything. And this was all stuff that predated. Well, let's look at some stuff that predated, right? We got Don Jr. Well, first of all, we had Eric Trump going, we get a lot of money from Russia on the golf course, right? So
and the charities.
And the charities, the fake charities, and the stealing from kids with cancer and all that horribleness. But he got I don't want to say, it's not like Don Jr. had to get his dad on the phone to get a deal. His dad was the phone. It was Trump org. This wasn't Biden org, and Hunter Biden is running Biden org, and Biden's absent. This was Hunter Biden doing whatever the hell he's doing because he's the kid and whatever, and he had whatever skills that he had. No. Don Jr. was working for his dad, and taking meetings in 2012 with the head of the BIB bank, right, which is this very corrupt bank in the Baltics and Latvia and all these places. That's now, you can look that up, folks. It's the guy that was the head of that bank was laundering money for the drug cartels. And Don Jr. is, well, I'm going to a meeting with this guy, right? So for Trump org, for his dad. He didn't have another business, for his dad. That's what he's doing. And then we had remember the Torsion, Alexander Torsion? And, who we got all that Don Jr. was in meetings with him about getting money from him. Who's running a very corrupt bank. Again, corruption, money, trying to
NRA. Yeah.
And this came out of the Jose Grinda investigation over in Spain into Russian organized crime and Torsion's role in that. And lo and behold, he had to hand over to Mueller. Oh yeah, this guy, the president's son, is talking to this guy. Not good. In the middle of an actual investigation into actual organized crime, transnational organized crime out of Spain.
Yeah. He also participated in the Trump Tower meeting, which was illegal, and was on the cover of Time magazine with the heading "Red-Handed."
That's right. So I don't know. Are we supposed to be outraged? Or are we supposed to what for me is, I just feel like we have to continue to keep bringing these things up, because that you can't report on Hunter and this whole thing without doing this. You can't both sides in one direction. Yeah. They're both siding in one direction and normalizing the Trumps by vilifying the Bidens and trying to find corruption there, yet never going back and balancing that out with what I just did right there. Well, it's not that hard. This took me 5 minutes.
Well, 8, but yes.
8.
That's what the media
8 minutes
report.
here, 5 minutes of prep. 5 minutes of prep.
Yeah.
You know, from their own reporting. I didn't pull this off of crazy blogs. I got this from the fucking New York Times and from the NBC and their affiliates, and CNN and their affiliates. So they're even now having, as New York Times did when Donald Trump was running, they're having amnesia about their own reporting, about their own archives. They can't even be bothered to surface up their own reporting. So that's what I think. That's what I think about McCarthy. I know I went all the way there, but so what do I don't know what to think about McCarthy. Whatever. He's doing the deal he made.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that was good. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. So
is that what you wanted to hear? Okay.
That's good. What I wanted to hear.
I'm going to have a drink.
I think it's also for the last thing about Hunter Biden. I think it's extremely ironic / Alanis Morissette should show up and sing the song that he's being indicted on a gun charge. Where's all the Second Amendment bros now? Yeah. Where are you? Shouldn't you be picketing in front of Hunter Biden's house? You fucking hypocrite losers. Anyway. How
about we just, someone had a tweet out calling for, all right, let's call for background checks, universal background checks. Call it the Hunter Biden bill, background check bill, and let the Republicans vote against it. Yeah. This is the kind of thing I mean when I say the Democrats are just sitting there going, oh, no, they'll do it. Like, do that. That's actually a great idea.
It is a great idea.
Get it done.
All right. Moving along, because we don't want to keep our guests.
We don't want to keep our guests.
Yeah. Okay. This is called JFB. Okay. So there's a lot of op-eds circulating lately. I've been reading or seeing about how Joe Biden shouldn't run because he's too old, or he's selfish, or he's this, or what they really mean is that he should pick a new vice president because Kamala is unpopular and I don't like how she laughs and why don't people like her and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
We have David Ignatius at the Washington Post. We have Jonathan Chait at New York Magazine. We have Nate Silver, who apparently I've thought of a good nickname for him, Broken Clock, because he's right like twice a day, and that's it, right? Just kind of by accident. So
twice a decade, maybe.
What are all these people have in common saying this? Gee, I wonder. They're all white dudes. So okay, look, I get if you want to replace Biden if he sucks, right? he's awesome. Like, he's doing a really good job. And I think people, I keep saying this, and I don't know if it's landing right. He is the best president of my lifetime, period. Full stop. There's nobody even close to doing what he's doing. Yeah. And when you think about where the country was when he came and took the job, we were in the middle of the fucking pandemic, which was exacerbated by Trump. We're in the middle of this chaos. The insurrection just happened to the point where we were worried that there was going to be violence during the inauguration. Okay. Now we're totally back to the media having the luxury to fuck up again. Right. Why? Who's responsible for that? Joe Biden is responsible for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
they thank him for their laziness. They get to be lazy.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. These fucking people are bored and they want fucking clickbait bullshit articles. He's done a great job on the domestic front. The economy is doing really well. The foreign policy stuff is really hard right now. Putin is hard. That is a hard situation to manage. Trump had almost destroyed NATO. Biden put it back together again in 2 fucking weeks because he knows all these people, because he's been around for a long time. And sometimes in some jobs, at certain moments in history, experience is actually kind of important. And this is one of those fucking times. I'd rather have a guy who's 80 and awesome than a guy who's 50 and fucking sucks. Ted Cruz is Gen X. We want him? No fucking way. So, I don't get that. Okay. And then there's the whole, he's not going to get rid of Kamala. It's not happening. But Joe Biden is authentically popular with the African-American community in this country. And the reason why is, okay, and somebody wrote about this on Facebook, and I can't remember who it was, because he was the vice president for Barack Obama, the first black president, for 8 years, okay? And did
it well. Yeah,
yes.
It was great.
He could have been an asshole about it. He could have been. He was not. He showed by 8 years of actions that he's an ally. That's what he did, and everybody knows it. Now, flip side, Donald Trump, Jesse Waters on Fox News with a straight fucking face says that Trump is gangsta because he has a mugshot now, and that will make him, give him more cred with the black. This is a real thing. Look at Kat Abugazale's thing. They actually said this, okay? Yeah. They're desperate. And this is an authentic thing. Now, David Ignatius, fine. He has great things to say about foreign policy. He ain't the backbone of the fucking Democratic Party. No. The backbone is the backbone, okay? And union workers.
Yes.
And
we're certainly having a moment. Labor's having a moment right now.
Yes. Who chose Kamala Harris to be vice president? Joe Biden did. So he's every other choice he's made has been great. I accept this choice as great also. Joe Biden, when he took the job, had a reputation as being a middle of the road, not very progressive politician. He's had a very progressive presidency. Why the fuck do you think that is? Is it maybe because Kamala is kind of like influencing him? Duh. Yes. Okay. There's all these Kamala's not popular. The polls say, the polls, Nate Silver? Is that what says? The polls a year and a half before the fucking election? Who gives a shit? Every time she goes anywhere, there's lots of crowds and people are excited. And look, I'm going to end here, okay, with this point. That there are the same people that said 8 years ago, well, I want a woman president, but I don't want it to be Hillary. And then they said, I want a woman president, but I don't want it to be Nancy Pelosi. And then they said, are the same people now saying, I want a woman president, but I don't want it to be Kamala Harris. Those are the 3 most fucking qualified people we've ever goddamn had for that job. So if you don't want those 3 as president, maybe you don't actually want a woman president. Okay. Sit on that. And anybody watching this, if people don't like Kamala, that's what you should say. Call them out in their fucking misogyny. Okay. Last thing. It's, how people are like, FJB, fuck Joe Biden, fuck Joe Biden. No, not fuck Joe Biden. It's Joe fucking Biden. That's it.
I'm having a drink. Lovely to have you back, Greg Olear.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Do you have anything to add? See.
No, I have nothing to add to that. I loved it, and you did it with 2 minutes and 30 seconds to spare.
Oh, good, because I don't want to keep our guests waiting.
I don't want to keep him waiting either.
This might be the best we've ever done with this, by the way.
I know.
I think this is the best we've ever done on not keeping somebody waiting. Good for us. Okay, we've shown this before. it has a little tweak, but you know what? And we thought about it. Should we show it again? It's 9/11 week, so fucking yeah, we're showing it again. There we go.
I know what you're thinking about LIV Golf, the new golf tour funded by the Saudi royal family. Sure, it's sweet that so many golf gods like me are getting paid insane amounts of money to play golf, but what about the moms? What about the kids? Hi, I'm Phil Mickelson, and I'm here to tell you about the latest fairway fun from MBS and Friends. LIV Golf Kingdom. LIV Golf Kingdom is great for the whole family. At LIV Golf Kingdom, our driving ranges are world class. Even the ladies can tee it up and take a few whacks, although the gals have to use the irons because the Saudis don't like it when women drive. At LIV Golf Kingdom, we have the best mini golf courses on the planet. Navigate your ball through the dismembered Jamal Khashoggi body parts on the third hole, and you get a free LIV Golf bone saw. If you hit the top of the scale model of the World Trade Center with the special 9/11 ball, the replica Twin Towers collapse into a pile of rubble, and you win a LIV Golf Center box cutter. And get this, if you get a hole-in-one on the 18th hole, you literally strike oil. The kids love it. Between the golf, the sword dancing, and the orb fondling, LIV Golf Kingdom really does have it all. So come on down to LIV Golf Kingdom, or else the Crown Prince will have you beheaded. Just kidding. He only does that to civil rights activists, dissident journalists, and gays. And now, back to the show.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you, Chunk, for the excellent animation, and calling out Chunk also for the Lauren Boebert Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice in the those opening credits. Which, by the way, I made this. I'm just going to show this real quick because we're right on time here. I made this this morning because fun with Photoshop. So there you have it. New Beetlejuice cast. Yeah, it's good stuff.
I know you sent it to me like. Is it okay to take his head off if it's not bloody? It's like, well, yeah, it's part of the plot.
I don't know. All right. Now, okay, our guest is a former diplomat and a consultant. He's the author of an excellent book called How Britain Broke the World. He has a new podcast. He's had podcasts before. His new podcast is called Behind the Lines. Joining us from the United Kingdom, Arthur Snell.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for staying up late with us. Are you having a cocktail as well, or is it too late now for you?
No, it's never too late.
Oh,
awesome. Cheers.
Excellent. Cheers to you.
So now this is the third. I think this is the third podcast iteration that you've had, and they're all great. I love listening to this stuff because you obviously know so much. You've been all over the world and served in a lot of different places, and you. In that time, obviously know a lot of people who are experts in all these areas. And the work on Ukraine was great. The last one that you did, this one seems to take a more broader view of what's going on. So so far you've talked about Ukraine, you've talked about some countries in Africa. What else are you planning to focus on in this? What can we expect in the weeks ahead?
Yeah, so I've Behind the Lines, this new podcast, I thought I wanted to have the excuse to kind of go anywhere. And of course, people are very interested in what's happening in Ukraine. So we're not going to ignore that. But as you've mentioned there, yeah, we've gone a bit more global. So actually, next week, we're going to be talking about Libya. Okay. It's people, I'm sure, are aware there's been these terrible floods in the town of Derna got wiped out. But of course, part of the reason the town got wiped out is that Libya is no longer a country. It's a place on a map. It has two governments. It's got these kind of different warlords and different groups in different areas. So sort of look at that a bit. But we'll be going back to Ukraine. We'll be looking at. We may even look at your wonderful country, which has some complicated things going on.
Yeah,
I would love to hear an episode about our country with non-Americans talking about it. That would be fascinating.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah. That's a great
idea. Make it happen, Arthur.
We're working on it.
Okay.
Good. I love it. But let's start with Ukraine because obviously things are happening there. It seems to be. I've had Crimea on the brain. I had an expert on who's a native of Crimea on my podcast, and I've written about it a little bit. And I was listening to our friend Zarina Zabriskie interview Ben Hodges, the retired American general, talking about Crimea being kind of the kind of the end all goal for the Ukrainians, because once they liberate Crimea, the Russians don't care about Donbass. That's what they want. They only want Eastern Ukraine to get to Crimea. And now there seems to be a lot more activity there. No thanks to Elon Musk, but they've hit some ships and some cruisers. And now we've given them these weapons that can launch into Crimea. So is this a thing that's happening? Is there real movement there? What do you think what's going on in that part of the world right now?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting. And as you say, that's the thing that the Russians really want. And so if we go all the way back to 2014, of course, that's when the Russians seized Crimea. Remember those little green men running around? The thing that a lot of people forget is that even prior to 2014, the Russians had their naval base down in Sevastopol. So prior to Putin's invasion of Crimea in 2014, there was this deal in place, albeit a deal that the Ukrainians never really had much choice over. So Crimea has been important to the Russians for a very long time. And this most recent strike where they took out a submarine, the Ukrainians took out a submarine at the naval dockyard there in Sevastopol, and this other ship. That's really like striking at the heart of Russia's naval power. And it's amazing if you think about it, Ukraine doesn't have a navy, and yet they're destroying the Russian navy. I mean, that takes some doing.
We love it so much. That was yesterday? Was that just yesterday?
Yeah, I think it was day before. Yeah, but they've been building up to this. So the Russian air defense, Russia's always had a very impressive air defense, and obviously over Crimea in particular. And so up until a certain point, it was pointless firing these missiles. So there's a Storm Shadow, which actually was one the British gave them. There's another one the French gave them. There's various different longer range missiles the Ukrainians have, but there was no point in them using it until they'd taken out this Russian air defense. And it was a commando raid about a couple of weeks ago that did that. But I don't think many people noticed, because, that in itself, it was just one of these little things that went bang in the night. But now what it's done is it's made them vulnerable down there in Crimea.
It's good to see. What I'm hearing and reading is that the Crimean people, the people that live in Crimea, even the Russian ones and the Russian speakers want Russia to be gone. It seems to be even the population there is kind of like, okay, we're done with you. Get out of here. Yeah.
Well, I think that's right. And so I was in Kyiv in April this year, and I had a meeting at the Crimea office that they have there in Kyiv, which is kind of the government in exile for Crimea, for when the sort of equivalent of a state government, I guess. And they were showing me all this information about what the Russians are doing to the population there. And of course, if you turn up in Crimea with a Ukrainian flag, you get arrested. People are disappearing. There are all kinds of kind of violations of basic rights. And of course, in a way, you could say that's not surprising, but it's kind of ironic, because of course the Russians are telling us that they liberated Crimea from Ukrainian fascists. We all know that's bullshit. But then if you look at the way that they treat these places, even the ones that they claim are the places that they're trying to protect, they treat the population with the same level of disdain that they seem to do everywhere else, of course.
Yeah. And it's a tourist economy, from what I understand. Like they need tourists to go there and stay at the beaches and stuff. So it's bad the Russians are bad for business, which they are pretty much everywhere, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, historically, Crimea was this beautiful place that every Russian had a happy memory of having visited there at some point. In the old days, and of course that they've destroyed that, and they'll never be able to go back. And there has been, I think, even among people who are quite, who are supportive of Ukraine, sometimes there's been this idea where they say, well, there's a deal to be done there. You let the Russians keep Crimea, and then that might be a deal to end the war. But then you just have to turn that on its head and say, well, how would Ukraine feel? So this country that keeps invading them gets to keep a bit of their own land that's joined on, that is full of military installations and all kinds of other, sort of strategic sites. It's absolutely impossible that Russia can keep Crimea if Ukraine is ever going to be secured. So, retaking Crimea is just as important as retaking any other part of Ukraine.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it on a map too, it's pretty obvious where it belongs. I mean, it's not, It would be like, It would be like Pennsylvania saying, "Hey, we're taking Long Island from you, New York." It doesn't make any sense. It just, geographically, map-wise, it doesn't make any sense. Now, okay, straying a bit from Ukraine, I want to talk a little bit, because you've spent time on this on the new podcast, which I think is great because it's underreported, certainly in this country. And I'm talking about Africa.
Yes.
And there's been a series of coups in countries in Africa, and there's stuff happening right now, I believe, in Niger, where the French, the embassy, or something's going on with the French embassy there. And the guest, Brian Class, was talking about a coup contagion in Africa. So just for people who don't know, which includes me until I listen to the podcast, tell us a little bit about what is happening there, what's happened in the last year.
Yeah, sure. So if you look at a map of Africa and take the furthest western tip and kind of draw a straight line all the way across to the Red Sea, so all the way to opposite the Arabian Peninsula, every country on that line has had a military coup at some point from 2021 to now.
Wow.
And that's like what are we talking about? 4,000-mile line of territory. I mean, we're talking a huge area of land. So countries that everyone's heard of, big countries like Sudan, obviously people are familiar with the coup in Niger recently, but there was already in Mali, in Chad, in Guinea, in Burkina Faso, a whole set of countries. And they're all kind of next to each other. And it's not this idea of the coup contagion. It's not simply, obviously, that if the country next door has one, you think, well, we might do it. But as Brian Class, who's a professor here in London, was explaining on my podcast, when soldiers are thinking of seizing power in a country and they look at a nearby country and they've seen it seemed to work out okay, not too much bad stuff happened after you seize power. Well, that's one of the reasons that you might continue to do it. But there's a wider context, which is that these countries in the so-called Sahel region have gone through about a decade of kind of deteriorating security. And Greg, you mentioned the French there. There's been this historic French role in that region, and you had all these kind of stabilization missions. And to be honest with you, what the French have experienced there has been a bit like what the Americans and others experienced in Afghanistan. They went in with a lot of probably the best of intentions, trying to stabilize these countries, maybe bring a kind of democratic future. And for all kinds of reasons, these things really don't work out. And you end up the country becoming less and less stable. You become less and less popular, and basically, for want of a better term, it's a shit show. In most of these countries, the French forces have pulled out, and there were American forces in Niger. Most of those have drawn down. So you end up with these kind of big, unstable spaces of territory, and then others move in, and that's where Wagner, the Russian mercenaries, they're now all over this region. But then when they go to try and grab the gold and the diamonds and the other things that they can kind of loot the country with.
Yeah.
What? Oh, go ahead, Elby.
Well, I was just going to say, you also have I just was thinking of Jared Kushner and Benny Steinmetz and Dan Gertler and these other sort of oligarchs via Israel, right? That have long been in those regions, profiting off of the destabilization. I don't know if participating in the destabilization, but certainly profiting off of it. So it is about the diamonds. It is about the golds. It is about the minerals. So it's a rich continent.
I mean, that guy you mentioned, Benny Steinmetz in particular, I mean, he's contesting it, but in a Swiss court, he has, I think, twice been convicted of having paid bribes to the president of Guinea. And this is for, these sort of $1 billion deposits of different minerals. And of course, the average citizen of that country doesn't see any of that.
Right. And that was Alan Dershowitz's client and Jared Kushner's wallet. In the developments in New Jersey for for the Kushner family, for their real estate fortunes. It's always the same group of people. We always, Arthur, come back to these same group of people. It's almost like it's a crime syndicate.
Well, right. But since I know Jared Kushner is, one of your favorite people, it's worth remembering that in Libya, which of course is adjacent to the countries I'm talking about here, you have this very complicated connection between there's this guy Haftar, who was the kind of warlord in the region where this terrible flood happened, and of course, he's far too busy being a warlord to worry about flood defenses or repairing the dams or whatever. And Haftar at one stage got a whole load of help from the Wagner group again, but there was another stage where Eric Prince, do you remember?
I remember with the helicopters and the thing, and let us help you with your coup.
And of course, that brings us back to the same crowd of people. Who was paying Haftar all this money so that he could hire Eric Prince or hire Wagner? Well, the money came from Saudi Arabia, of course, because who else has all this money?
What a surprise.
No way. Say it ain't so.
Is this the Mideast peace? Is it happening in Africa? What's happening here? This is all. Yeah. It's just such the languaging around it and the storytelling around it is such garbage. So I'm so pleased that you're bringing light to it and bringing facts to bear and like actually having people understand that it always has felt like, okay, well, Africa has its own, it's like a thing over here and it's terrible, but it's felt isolated. So to bring it into the conversation of, oh, no, it's connected to all of these things, that are coming at our Western democracy as well. I think it's very important. So, yeah,
I totally agree.
I have a question about the coup. I like coup contagion. I like that phrase. That's from the podcast, your podcast. One of the reasons that the coup people in the various countries, I think, have been emboldened, at least I think this is what Brian was talking about, was, the sort of tepid response from the West. Somebody looks at it and says, oh, no, it's like jaywalking. It's like, oh, he walked across the street. Cops didn't do anything. I might as well do it. And finally you're like, fuck it. I'm not, why am I waiting for, no one's waiting for the light. I'll just go. And not to make light of this, because it's obviously a serious thing, but what should the West do differently than it's doing now to help? Because I feel like we're in a global kind of war that is an undeclared war against these sort of fascist dictatorial regimes. These are all, they're military coups. They're obviously all dictatorships to some degree. We would rather not have that. So what should we be doing? What can we do? Not us personally, but the governments even. Yeah,
I mean, it's a great question. And you're absolutely right. Obviously, there's a global struggle for democracy at the moment. And, some people were trying, General Flynn wanted to have a coup in Washington, D.C., didn't he? So it's, the coup contagion, it can spread far and wide. And I think that basically what's happened is that the sort of the wealthy countries, where you go to global north or the West or whatever, however we term that, have kind of turned in on themselves. Obviously, Ukraine has sucked a lot of attention, and that rightly so. Clearly, that's a big priority. But actually, for a long time, there were financial sanctions or other kind of sanctions that would be put onto the leaders of these countries if they carried out a military takeover. And these days, I think it's all becoming a little bit sort of softer, because ultimately there is this kind of sense that, well, it's all a bit complicated. We just have to leave these countries to do their own thing. Now, as I mentioned there, with this thing of the French intervention, I'm not saying you should send armies there, because I think we learned from the years in Afghanistan and Iraq and so on that intervening in that way doesn't necessarily help. I think actually it's the very slow stuff about sort of building up institutions. And of course, if you're lucky enough to live in a democracy, that the democracy didn't happen overnight. It built up over decades and centuries. And we've just got to help those countries to have the same process.
I would say educating girls always seems to make big change happen over time.
That's a great point.
So there are things like that. And I know we have our NGOs in there, and they're global NGOs that spent quite a bit of resources and time and focus on Africa. I think those kinds of interventions also should have maybe a higher degree of inspection on a regular basis from the Western nations and democracies that that are pouring the money through them into there. I just have like there's stories of how things can work.
Yeah.
But you need creative, smart people on the other that are corrupt, that aren't participating in the corruption on the other side of it, yet know how to function within a corrupt place. And that, to me, speaking to you as a diplomat, seems like that's the balance of, I'm not going to become corrupt myself, but I've got to function within this in order for change to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And of course, another really important aspect, the world's fastest growing populations are also in the countries of this region, in the Sahel.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And so, I mean, in a way, there's this sort of tragedy of these very poor countries with quite limited
population
healthcare but actually people are having huge families. And of course, some countries have allowed, domestic ideology about family planning and so on, to cloud their their international development aid and so on. And alongside education for women, which I couldn't agree more about, is also about family planning, supporting that.
Okay, now bringing it a little bit closer to home.
And
again, the Africa stuff is great. And I forgot. Wait, here. I want to show this.
There we go.
There's your podcast. Behind, we're getting fancy here. We're showing I forgot that we could do this. We have the technology.
We had to have a
guest.
Arthur, wait a minute. We had to have a guest on last week to teach us how to do this, who'd never worked with this system before. Okay. This is what we're up against here with ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, so I feel now a pressure to show you how to do something clever.
We need to give you some controls, and then you can help us.
Yeah. How do we negotiate in a room with Mike Flynn? Tell it no. Anyway, so if you're watching this, check out this podcast. It's really good. Just go subscribe. Just hit the little plus button. Generally, just subscribe to podcasts because it helps us when you do that.
Yeah. It really does.
Even if you don't listen
even if you don't get around to listening to the lessons,
it really helps. So
please subscribe. Yeah.
Please subscribe. Yeah.
Please subscribe. I think I forgot to put the banner back on. This is,
you did. There we go.
Speaking of technology failing. Okay, bringing it closer to home now. Fascist parties and right-wing stuff seems to be on the rise in Europe, particularly on the continent.
Yeah.
I don't know why this is. I don't know if it's because of the parliamentary systems of government there, where right-wing parties can have more of a higher percentage than places like here. What are you seeing? Are you concerned with what's going on in some of these countries? What's your take on what's going on?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a source of concern, and you see these things rise and fall. So obviously, people are very familiar with Hungary, Tucker Carlson's favorite country, which mysteriously was mysteriously popular. But that the fascists have taken over there basically, and really interesting how just the other day Vladimir Putin, he kind of apologized for the 1956 Russian invasion of Hungary, because that's the kind of last thing that he and Viktor Orban don't agree about. So he's now got that out of the way, and
he needs his friends.
Yeah, exactly. And I think quite often it's in some of these smaller countries where possibly the politics is a bit less transparent, where maybe money goes a bit further. So there's an election later in the year in Slovakia, and the kind of Slovakia's answer to Viktor Orban is doing very well in the polling. Now we might say, well, really, does Slovakia matter? Well, I'll tell you one way it matters. They manufacture a hell of a lot of the arms that are currently heading to Ukraine. Now, if they go the way of Hungary, Europe's ability to support Ukraine will be diminished. So you have these kinds of situations, but then on the other hand, that we've got to think about some of the big countries, and the biggest one of all that really, in this space clearly is France. Now, Emmanuel Macron, he's term limited. So the next presidential election, you go back to the Le Pen family. There's always, fascists trying to take over France. They've been doing it for generations. I don't believe that a Le Pen will win a presidential election in France, but they keep getting higher scores.
Which one now? Who
So it's
are we
Marine Le Pen this
Marine.
time.
Right, Marine. Is she okay? So it's still her.
Yeah.
I thought there was some brother somewhere.
Well, there's a niece as well, who's she's sort of getting ready for the third generation, I think. So,
oh God,
does she live in Nice? No, that would be too. She lives in Cannes. That would be too clever. So, and then what's going on now in your country? Because I love that you were on my podcast during the very, very brief Liz Truss interregnum.
It's like a sort of a magical moment in time.
But what's going on with Sunak? He seems like he's not like I want to go have a beer with the guy, but he seems at least, like he knows how to drive the car. Is that the sense there?
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I think he is he's a kind of technocrat. He's a fairly mainstream sort of technocratic right-wing politician, basically. He wouldn't go very far in the kind of MAGA world, but he'd like in a Mitt Romney administration, he'd be a secretary for something. That's who he is. He's all right. I mean, he's not doing well in the polls. We've got to have an election next year. All the signs are that the Labour Party would win. And given that we've had the Tories in for, a decade and a half now, it's about time for a change. But coming back to sing about the kind of this sort of fascism and fascism adjacent politicians, I think what you have in the UK context is, they're all in one party, and arguably that's perhaps what's happening in your country. You have one big Conservative party, and that has some moderates, not many left, and then
it just has all the Nazis in it. Let's just use the word. It has them all. Yeah.
So I think that the UK Tory party still probably has a reasonable number of moderates, but not as many as it used to. And Boris Johnson kicked out a lot of the moderates. So let's assume that the Tories do lose the next election, then there'll be that usual infighting that you get once a party's just lost an election, and it'll be interesting to see whether the kind of hardliners grab control or whether actually the party drifts back to the center.
Yeah, I think anyone who would have seized control has already seized control. It's like the crisis of the third century in ancient Rome, except that they didn't die; they just got pushed to the side. So who would take over? Is it, what's his name? Kier Starmer? That sounds like a Nazi blog name to me. The Daily Star. Is that who the guy is now, or is it going to be somebody else?
No, that's him. I mean, he's quite a sort of a harmless character, really. Kier Starmer. He was a former chief prosecutor of the UK. Quite a sort of serious, respected lawyer. Very, very middle of the road, not hard left, definitely. He's I think all the polls, all the experts say he's the next prime minister. Now, of course, pollsters are often wrong, but I think it does look, consistently the Tories are 20 points behind, and they have been for months on end. So I think that looks very likely now.
When is the election again?
Well, it's not fixed, but everyone's saying it will be probably next summer.
Okay.
So some people are saying it's May 24, but at some point in 2024.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
I think I think Starmer will be really good. I think he's like, my sense is he's one of those guys that's kind of boring as a campaigner, but will probably be really great as an administrator. Because we confuse the two things a lot, and it's like maybe it's better to have someone who knows what the fuck they're doing, who isn't good on TV.
It's got to be worth trying, hasn't it?
Yeah. You've had a lot of ham in there for quite a while.
Exactly.
A lot of ham.
Once you've had Liz Truss as your prime minister, you've tried everything.
Cabbage. So. Little ham and cabbage.
Yeah, exactly.
Going full Irish.
Now I know it's late. And we want to let you go to bed, even though I know you're a night owl. I do want to ask you one thing, since you brought up Mike Flynn, and I keep forgetting to ask you every time you're on. Am I right in saying that you've met him before? Right,
in Baghdad. So he was
in Baghdad.
In the phase of his life when he was a serving military officer and had yet to disgrace himself.
Yeah.
He was the head of the kind of military intelligence in Iraq, in the US Army in Iraq, and I would quite regularly go to meetings where he was there, and I mean, I'd love to say, well, and I always knew he'd turn out into a complete crazy QAnon guy, and I wouldn't say I did. I mean, he seemed like a bit of a bull breaker, he seemed quite annoying, but
he had the haircut and the jaw,
right.
know.
Yeah, exactly.
Central Casting was doing its work there. Yeah.
But if you're a general in a war zone, you're allowed to be a bit annoying. That doesn't so it doesn't make you a coup plotter. So
right. I'm laughing like, of course, if you're a general in a war zone, you act like that. I know what that's like. I don't know what that's like at all. No, I've been meaning to ask you that. So because I know, is it one of these things? Because when I worked at AP years ago, and I was not a journalist, I worked in HR, but I knew John Solomon, who at the time was the deputy bureau chief for the Washington Bureau, or assistant, whatever he was. And he was like a totally nice guy. And now he's in the news as this crazy QAnon, Rudy Giuliani adjacent wackadoodle. And it's like, that guy? Really? Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
And always never forgetting when we mentioned John Solomon, and also Trump's designee after the fact of keeping his presidential records.
Yeah, that too. Did
you know that, Arthur Snell?
I did not know that.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Added to the list of, I don't know, 20 of them.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I the question I often have about General Flynn is, what does his brother think? Because he has a brother who is, I think, still serving as a general officer.
Yes.
And can you imagine what it's like at Thanksgiving?
Well, there was one holiday where a lot of the family, all the siblings got together. I don't know if that brother was there. And they all took the QAnon pledge around a campfire.
Or something very adjacent to the QAnon pledge. We don't want to say that they actually did the QAnon pledge.
Oh, really? All right. I thought that was a QAnon. I mean, it's the same words in the same order.
Tomato. Let's call the whole thing off.
All right. What do I know? Yeah. What do I
know? Okay. So wait, I'm now that we have the technology, I'm going to show this one more time. There we go. The new podcast is called Behind the Lines with Arthur Snell. It is, it's really good. And it's only we're only a few episodes in, so you can get caught up pretty quickly. And
very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you're doing great work. I love these podcasts. I think they're really valuable, like to hip us to what's going on. And, thank you for doing this work. We appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. It's a great pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Arthur. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Good night, Arthur.
Cheers. All right. Yay. I'm so bad with transitions. I'm trying to get better.
You're getting
trying to get better. Trying to get better.
You are getting better. And it's just lovely to have him on. It kind of classes us up a little bit. Yeah. So now let's eat the cherry in front of everybody.
No, I'm not to the cherry stage yet. Because
you're not to the cherry.
He doesn't care if we eat the cherry. It's fine.
Yeah, well, I know. It's the accent. I did a half of a Manhattan.
Okay. I'm on my, I don't know. It's a bottomless Manhattan, sort of.
All right, let's dive into our fourth topic.
Okay, I've turned my page.
Turn your page.
Okay, here, you alluded to this before. Start the timer. I did. You start the timer?
I'm on it tonight.
Wow, for no sleep, you're doing a good job. Okay, so you alluded to this earlier. We talked about Jared a little bit, but I remember years ago when I first met you, or even before I knew you, you were talking about Kushner. And the one thing you said is, why is Trump so afraid of this guy?
Yes.
He never says anything bad about him. Why?
This is when he was trashing everybody. He trashed his own family. Everyone was a coffee boy. And God forbid you take credit for something, anything. And he would let Jared take credit for everything, and it never went noted even.
It's weird, right? Okay.
It's weird.
And what's weird about Kushner too is he's a guy who does not have a constituency. And what I mean by that is even like a Donald Trump Jr., he has a lot of followers. He's like, look, he's a charismatic. I know we don't like him. We know this. He's a charismatic guy.
He's a douche lord. And so there are other douches that, excuse my language, but that's what it is. Yeah. We know this guy. Yeah.
he's with Aubrey O'Day. Like he's not nothing. He has people that like him out in the wild.
We
Kushner,
look at him and we go, okay, we can see the other people that would like him, that would be his buddies. He'd have running buddies.
I could see an alternate reality of me where I'd be like, yeah, I like this guy. He's my kind of douchebag. Like if I turned out to be a Republican jackoff, I'd be like, this guy's funny.
Yeah.
But
even Elon Musk has his fans. A lot of fans.
Lots of fans. He is a genius.
He's a repulsive human being, but he's got his constituency.
He's got his constituents.
Yeah, that's right.
Jared Kushner, he's fucking Carly Kloss's brother-in-law. Like, who the fuck gives a shit about this guy? No one likes him. Nikki Haley said he was a secret genius, but he doesn't have like that grassroots group. Like, every once in a while you hear like, oh, he's friends with Kushner. Hugh Jackman, friends with Kushner. Van, whatever his name is, Jones. What's his name? The guy on the CNN.
Yeah, Van Jones.
Friends with Kushner. It's like he has these friends, and then obviously MBS and Netanyahu and all this. By the way, oh my God, I'm skipping topics. Did you see that Elon Musk went to meet with Netanyahu to offer like absolution because of the anti-Semitism?
No.
Yeah.
He's meeting with
he's like two criminals meeting with each other, to like fucking talk about that. It's I can't. In that meeting, the fucking simulation might blow up. Anyway, that's a tangent. It amused me to no end.
I missed it.
So getting back to it, Jared Kushner has no constituency, and yet everyone seems to be terrified of him, including the fucking DOJ. Because I wrote a piece in 2018 about all the laws that he'd broken, including lying on his SF-86 form, which he did like multiple times in various drafts. And every time you do it,
every time.
Yeah. Nobody cares. It's whatever. Nobody gives a shit. Blah, blah, blah. No. And now he leaves the thing and immediately gets to manage. Now, people say they gave him $2 billion, and that's not true. Okay. He was given the $2 billion to manage as money. So it was not, no, it's, I don't want to, I want to make sure we get the facts right because they're fucking bad enough. He gets a percentage of that, which is not, I think it's like $28 million a year from that shit. Right.
He gets to manage it into his own
shit. And the Saudi people, when even the Saudi money people were like, why are we doing this? This guy's a fucking moron. They were like, it's really an investment in getting to have good relations with Jared Kushner. So again, why the fuck does Saudi Arabia want good relations with Jared Kushner? What's so goddamn important about this guy? What is it with him? What is it? Tell us, LB. Do you know?
Maybe.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. We're just talking,
We're just talking.
It's a rhetorical question in this sense.
I will say it this way. He's a horrible human being.
He killed 1 million Americans.
Horrible. He is the worst you can conjure up. He is dumb. I do think he's the dumbest of them all. But I think it's pretty obvious, who and what he traders for. And, there's crooks abound around him. Crooks abound. Yeah. And and people are afraid of him. They're afraid of him. I think that has to do a lot with, he had a very, very powerful publicist that was like his mentor and surrogate father when his dad was in the penitentiary and the federal pen. And then after he's got Rupert Murdoch,
Pecker too. He controlled all that AMI shit.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So he's got a lot of powerful people around him that are, and these are people who can make careers and break careers of journalists. So I think journalists are, I think people are afraid of him in that way. I don't know what he's like in person or behind the scenes, but
boring. I'm gonna guess.
It's just like, I don't know, it's a bad situation with this guy. It just is. It's a bad situation. And I wish the Department of Justice took it seriously and stopped doing the kinds of things that we know that they did in the 90s, if not earlier, and in the 2000s, with letting very notorious characters on the world stage run their shit and look the other way because they're afraid of the other places that that individual might be connected to. I just wish that would stop. I don't know how to make it stop, but it would be nice if it stopped.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm not trying to speak in code, everybody. I just don't want to get sued. I'm on strike. You know, I don't have pocketbooks that stretch out to the links of all of this. Good reporting. Investigative journalism needs to return. I'm not saying it's completely gone, but certainly it's rough out there for journalists that do great work, and they need money and they need resources and they need support to do the kinds of stories that would illuminate that question, you know, and get sourced and go through all the rigors of journalism that are required. And that's the kind of stuff that pushes the Department of Justice. Like, oh, okay, there's stuff out in the open about this guy. Let's go for it. And would help. But, you know, those resources seems to get choked into these corporate channels and away from the talent that could actually break the story. So we'll see.
Yeah. We'll see. I don't know. This guy, you know, Florham Park is where his office is. It's right up the street from, you know, where I grew up. And it drives me mad. I can't. On behalf of New Jersey, I want to apologize for Jared Kushner, for Leonard Leo, for Sam Alito. Yeah. Jesus Christ, man. We're not doing so good.
You got some good stuff coming out of Jersey, too. I feel like there was something else we were going to say about him.
I don't know. Oh, here's another question. Just a way to frame it. Okay. Just a way to think about it.
All right.
Steve Mnuchin, your friend, Steve Mnuchin, who ran the fucking Treasury Department, managed the PPP for 4 years. He stayed the whole time quietly. The only time he made any headlines was when his wifey there went to Fort Knox and acted like a Bond villain.
And also when he refused to turn over Trump's tax returns, and when he would scold Maxine Waters.
Yeah. Have you ever seen his signature? Go look at it. It's funny.
No, I can't.
It's like block letters.
I can't.
So dumb. Anyway, he also, you know, started a fund after he left the job.
Yeah, fascinating. With some Saudi
money. But he fucking worked for Goldman Sachs. His father ran the Goldman Sachs arbitrage department.
Yes, and then he became an art dealer.
Oh, fucking yeah. Anyway, yeah, I have it on some authority. Not great. Anyway, so Mnuchin knows how to manage money. I think we can safely say.
Maybe.
Right. He has experience.
He understands
managing
dollars
money.
And cents and rubles and.
The Saudis gave him $1 billion, and they gave Jared $2. So Jared fucking Kushner is twice as important. And again, the Saudis in their internal memo were like, "This is basically done because we want to stay on this guy's good side."
Yeah.
So, what the actual fuck? But you know,
well,
I don't know.
You brought up a great name in Steve Mnuchin, and where is Steve Mnuchin?
In the Middle East, making money.
Why does that guy get to slip right out of all of that fuckery? Remember, he stood there as a Jewish man next to Donald Trump when Donald Trump said there were very good people on both sides of that, of Charlottesville. There was Elaine Chao and Steve Mnuchin. And he didn't say a thing, and he didn't leave, and he stayed in that position.
Yeah, well, you know. Like I wrote about Jared long ago. I love rehashing old jokes. The acorn doesn't fall far from the trees, and that's just how it
doesn't fall from the trees. And I will say this for Jared's children, they are so blessed to be able to look up to both of their grandfathers, who are both felons. Both of their grandfathers are felons.
Oh my God. I don't know.
Have been arrested. I should say have been arrested. We'll see if Donald gets convicted. If he gets convicted, I mean, he might be 4 times as important of a criminal as Charles Kushner. We'll wait and see.
No comment. Okay. So yeah, all right. That's the Jared Kushner segment. Again, it's just boggles the mind that we didn't talk about this. This is the announcement section now. So just a few people.
Let's have some announcements.
Well, a few quick things I want to hit because we didn't really hit them. Okay. I want to acknowledge that Mitt Romney left. He's leaving. He's not running for re-election. Mitt Romney is always sort of the shorthand for the conservative OG GOP guy, right? Well, there's Mitt Romney. He's the only guy that voted to impeach Trump twice in the GOP Senate. And, I think that Mitt Romney isn't a horrible human being. I think I don't agree with his takes on things. He's a Bain Capital, vulture capitalist asshole. And you look at it like, remember when General Motors was on the brink of financial ruin back in 2008, during that whole election cycle? And Romney said we should let it go bankrupt and we should just let the process play out. And Obama said, no, we're not going to let it go bankrupt. People's lives are at stake. There's lots of jobs here. We're going to float it. They're going to pay us back, and that's how we're going to do it. Now, from a sheer business school perspective, Romney was right. Yeah, absolutely. Let it go bankrupt and let the system play out. But he's not a guy that considers the human element in these things. And that's the difference. I think that thing is the difference between the two parties of old. The Republicans are willing to be like, okay, well, I know this is bad, but the textbooks say, then the economy textbooks and the business, blah, 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 so we have to do it this way, and it'll work out. And I don't think Romney was, I don't know, by the book he isn't wrong, and I don't think he, I don't think he meant badly by it. I think he was earnestly thought that letting it go bankrupt would be the best thing to do. I don't think he was, but it just didn't fucking click in his brain, because he's not wired that way. But that Republican is gone. There's no more OG Republicans anymore.
So this is our announcement.
There's
our announcement is that's not. It's gone. Stop being nostalgic.
It's not. It's a guy that got. It's that guy, and it's Mitt Romney. Okay, and that's who's there. Everybody else is gone, and they're either retiring or that everybody else is left. Paul Ryan left. Anybody that was sort of normal is gone. The Republican Party now is the party of Kevin McCarthy and Matt Gaetz and the woman who got thrown out of Beetlejuice the musical for grabbing her date's dick.
Yeah.
That's what Republicans are now. So vote accordingly.
Accordingly.
I made another thing, LB. I made this. I was on a roll this morning. Okay.
All right, let me see.
We want to thank, this is the announcement. We want to thank everybody for watching, for subscribing, for joining, for being members. We appreciate you. There will be an after hours tonight because we haven't done one in 2 weeks. We're doing one tonight.
Yes, we are.
Sometimes people have a problem figuring out because on the phone, it doesn't work right. So if you go to the laptop, you can see, if you click on subscribe, just do that because it doesn't cost. It literally, all you have to do is click and it helps us out. To become a member, you click join. And then you can become a member. You can watch the after hours. We have a guest on the after hours. It'll be good.
That'll be good.
It'll be good.
Do you want to say who our guest is?
What if she does? What if something happens? The reason I never announce the guest, I'm always afraid people are gonna
scroll down, so I can't see if she's in the green.
No, because it's not this one. It's the next one. It's 2 different StreamYards. So she's not there yet. It's early anyway. Stream. Now I texted her 2 hours ago.
I think she's gonna be there.
Yeah, her name rhymes with Randy Lakem. So I think if you want to hear her tale of woe.
No, let's promote it. If she doesn't show up, and we'll be in there and we'll apologize. We want you to join anyway. But for those of you who've already joined and you want to come on over to the after show because hopefully Sandy Bacon will be there with us.
Sandy Bacon will be there. She'll be there. I get insecure because I'm an insecure person.
I understand. I'm not
insecure.
It's fine.
Yeah. I'm insecure.
I'm not.
And I was pretty secure about Arthur. I was like, yeah, he'll come. He's good. It's good. We're all good. So, but no, Sandy's going to come on. You know, she lost her Twitter account. She came back. We're gonna fucking just piss on Elon Musk for like an hour. That's what we're gonna do.
Oh, yay. Okay, let's do that.
So, okay. Those are the announcements. Again, thank you. Thank you for joining. We appreciate you. We're not great about saying this stuff, but we do appreciate it.
Yeah, we do.
And you know, if you have friends that you have any influence over, just tell them to just click the damn box and you know, subscribe, because it would helps us out.
Subscribe. It helps us out. All right, the clock.
Okay, number 5. Clock is ticking. Picking scabs. LB, what does this mean? What does this mean?
Well, we can even be short with this and go out a little early, because I'm just going to make it real simple. Drew Barrymore is a scab. What is a scab? A scab is someone who crosses a picket line when a union, or goes ahead and continues going back to work when they're either part of a union or they have union employees who are picketing, and they go ahead and cross that line. Now, the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild are technically guilds, not unions. It's a sliver of a difference between that. Unions are like there's trade unions, and then there's two different kinds of unions generally. So, and then a guild is where, okay, we don't all work for the same employer, but we're in the same business. And so, like the architects have a guild. Like, so in this guild, we're gonna form some basic general practices that everybody who we work with is going to have to agree to. And we do have collective bargaining agreements, what we call a master bargaining agreement. And we represent ourselves. We're independent contractors, writers and actors. But there's a minimum amount that you need to pay us in order to engage us in certain levels of work. And those minimum requirements are negotiated in our contracts with all of the people. And we represent ourselves in doing that. We don't have it's not the Teamsters union where there's a Teamsters group of people that aren't necessarily the laborers, right, that are working on that. So there's subtle differences. I don't want to get into all of them. I just want to say it's still a scab. Even if you're breaking, even if she's, we're a guild, not a union, and she's going for it. Because I saw people bringing up that argument. And she had this very teary thing. I just want to own my own choice and my decision, and this is why, and the pandemic, and the blah 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 blah. She cried on Twitter or whatever the fuck, Instagram or whatever. Here's the deal: she has writers on her show. Her show is a guild signatory, which means it agrees to the collective bargaining agreement. And because we are on strike, her writers are not showing up for work. So for her to continue to put her show, to produce her show while the strike is going on, somebody has to do that work. I don't care if it's her just sitting there riffing instead of there being writing. She doesn't have permission of the guilds to go ahead and do that, because all the talk shows are part of this strike. They have writers. Those writers are out there sacrificing everything, and she is just going on without her writers. It doesn't matter that she's in SAG and she's the one doing the writing. She's still taking somebody else's job as a non-writer writing.
Okay.
Do you understand? She's taking their job and doing their job. It doesn't matter if she herself is in some other guild. She's a scab in ours.
Ooh, okay. Say that again, because I think I'm going to say it, because this is a good point.
Yeah.
The reason she's a scab is that she's taking the writers' jobs, and the writers are on strike.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if she's also the host of the show, doesn't fucking matter. It would be like when the players go on strike remember in the NFL when they had replacement players during the strike? You don't remember this because you don't watch. But
I don't watch.
There were replacement players that came in and they broke the picket line and they all sucked, right? And it doesn't matter. The replacement player could be the owner of the fucking New York Giants.
It doesn't matter. You're taking
the job from the union person.
Right.
Therefore,
And at the most critical moment of the biggest strike in Hollywood history, she's fucking with it.
Yeah.
So you also show solidarity with other guilds if you're in a guild for this reason.
This is a good point.
Okay. By the way, has a reported net worth of 100. She doesn't need the money, and she certainly could find resources to pay. By the way, plenty of other very highly paid individuals are making sure that there's loans available or money available so that people don't lose their homes. Yes, there's all other kinds of people that are employed beyond the writers because of the writing, by the way. And those individuals are suffering as well. We're all suffering. And there's funds, and there's actors putting $1 million donations into those funds. There's people that have the kinds of resources she have that are supporting the workers who are fucking just trying to get an agreement with these motherfuckers that allow us to have a living.
Yeah.
And we just want a decent living. It's really, you can't afford to write on these shows with how the business is structured right now. The business model is fucked up, and we're trying to change that. And the people with all the money are preventing that, because the business model that's fucked up for us is really profiting them personally, not just their companies. Their personal salaries are off the fucking charts.
Yeah.
So that's what we're up against. She's a scab. Don't listen to any of it. And Bill Maher's a fucking piece of shit. I'm sorry. Come and sue me. He is. I
think his father was an orangutan.
Oh, yeah. Maybe his dad
I'm joking because
an angry old. Maybe his dad was Beetlejuice.
He said that Trump's dad was an orangutan. And Trump
I understand. And he got sued. So it's don't listen to these people. Listen to the folks that are out there that are fighting for a decent living wage. How about that? How about listening to us? My God.
So if Drew Barrymore is worth all that money, what she could do, because her argument is these people need to have jobs, and like, how many people work on her show? Like, realistically, like 50 tops, right?
Well, she's got a whole empire she's building.
No, I'm talking about the show, because she's going on the show.
On the show, I don't know. I don't know how big her operation.
How big can it fucking possibly be? It's a fucking talk show. Like, how many people?
It's a talk show.
She can't just give them money until the fucking strike is over. Come on.
I mean, I can't even.
Yeah,
I can't even.
It's an ego thing. She wants to be. She wants to be there.
Yeah.
So
that's that.
E.T. phone home. And if you phone home, you would find out that
E.T.
the mothership does not approve.
Yeah, E.T. would get on the ship and leave. Like, he's not. This is not. It's not okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. I don't care how much you cry and say you're being authentic and you want to own your shit. Just stop doing the thing that's hurting people. How about that? Don't apologize.
I don't know, though.
Don't apologize and continue with the behavior. What are you doing?
What we haven't considered is how desperately the world needs the Drew Barrymore show.
Oh, please.
I mean, it's so important. It's such an artistic expression.
We got to go now. We got to get into
I thought I would goad you into something.
No, I'm gonna transition out of here. Greg Olear.
Okay, we're gonna do the after hours. So if you are a member, you can join the after hours. We'll be posting it. It's on the YouTube page. It'll be on the YouTube page. You can find it on the YouTube page. Wait, I think that maybe now. True Player is gonna list it in the
Wonderful. And I'll do my best. It's very hard to find the comments to post in the end credits, but I'll do my best. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We love seeing you. We see you in the comments, even if we can't keep track of it all. So we love that you comment. Again, please join, please subscribe, even in basic, just hit that subscribe button. We will be back next week. We're going to be in the after hours. And Greg.
Yeah.
Remember?
I do.
We're going to get through this.